stand and join us in the. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the CHIP County Commission meeting. Is Chip online?
Yeah.
He did mention
Yes.
that I think last time that he would be zooming in. Good morning, Chip. Hi, Chip.
Good morning. Good morning.
Okay, approval of consent agenda with the notation that that's going to Builder Supply had a check this month, and I am the principal owner of that, so my vote will not include C.
No, you're D, you mean.
D.
Move to adopt consent agenda items A, B, and C.
Second.
Discussion moved by Chris, seconded by Brian to approve them. You have discussion? No, I thought I jumped. Approve items A, B, and C. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. We have another motion. Go ahead.
Move to adopt consent agenda number D.
Second.
Been moved by Nancy, seconded by Brian to approve consent agenda item D. All in favor?
I will abstain
As will I. Okay.
because of a direct conflict.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you. Comments from visitor.
The additions, did you the additions? I might have missed that. Additions to the agenda.
I did not. Oh, I didn't see it here. Oh, I
We
did.
are going to be adding to deliberate with persons designated to negotiate real property transactions under 2E for executive session.
I'd like to say on the additions to agenda, my thought and plan has always been for any commission can get something on there, but at the time of the meeting, one person asks for it, we usually want to have a second one before we add it. What I've usually gone by, if two people want to add it, we'll do. I only say that now because there's no controversy.
Right. Good time.
All right, thanks.
Speaker. Second.
Okay, and we have somebody who would like to speak. He's in person, Mr. Jeremy Hazenkamp. I think Mr. Hazenkamp's talk will be timely, not only for national issues and regional issues, but some local.
Have a seat if you
Yeah,
like.
please have a
So,
seat.
yeah, and we have invited Mr. Hazekamp here to speak about security issues. He runs a security firm.
Hi, commissioners. My name is Jeremy Hazenkamp. I run PacTac Protective Solutions. We are a security firm and we offer services in lots of different realms. Majority of us a armed prior law enforcement company. We do anything from uniform services in retail locations to plainclothes protection details for different elected. We've done a few elected officials. We also, executive members. We also provide, security assessments, training for personnel in the realms of personal safety and or, lack of a better word, self-defense. And we do things called, environmental awareness talks, how to get your staff to understand and see things that may be out of the ordinary. Things that law enforcement deal with. My background is I was with the state police for 22 and a half years, spent a variety of time actually in this county. Also did a lot of training on the training cadre for the state police. I was seeing a trend towards moving towards a lot of private security. And in 2017, I actually went to the private sector in some other realms and then founded the security side of my company in about 2018, 2019. And we've gone from basically 3 full-time employees to now we're almost 100 employees throughout Oregon and Washington, providing a variety of services, to high-end apartment complexes. Problem solving is our number one thing is, you can throw a lot of resources at something, but if you're not fixing the problem, obviously, you're just throwing money down the road, right? So we look at it from all aspects, from technology to personnel and even education of companies or personnel.
Brittany, can you get the camera changed? There we go. Thank you.
Well, it turned out that we were seeing Chip, but the people on film
Everybody
were
else
seeing us. How about that?
Technology.
How does that work?
And how did you know that?
Can I ask
Someone-
ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
In a previous life, I was a facility security officer at another port, and one of the trainings that we offered was active shooter training, which you'd think, wow, that seems kind of extreme, but it's pretty common training to have. And do you guys do like in-house trainings and things like that?
In-house, yes, we work with some clients also to do security procedures, update policies, procedures, and or help them, advise on it. I've actually, gone out, we have 4 virtual reality simulators. So a lot of times people will look at do these large scale exercises. Well, those are very time intensive, and you can't just, bring a case in, set it on the room, put a headset on someone and actually have them in an environment. So we have those available to run things like active threat training on a more frequent basis versus trying to get in actors and using real gunshots and things like that. I spent a lot of time with Force Science, which if you're familiar with that, it's very much on the behavioral based aspects of critical incidents, defensive, it's based a lot around deadly force incidents with law enforcement. But really one of the big things that I took from that is in situ training is always the best, but if you can't get to that, which in situ means actually in situation. So if you can actually, it's one thing you have tabletops, which you can do, it's easy to do tabletop exercises, right? I can bring people in, we can have a discussion about a lot of stuff. We can go, hey, if A happens, then we move to B and then ultimately we end up at C, right? That's easy to do tabletop. But where people are getting the most effect out of training is actually being there, doing it hands-on, having all the different stuff going, all the different stimulus is going on. So because it's very hard to set up those exercises, we are looking at the simulator side of it, because I can now have one instructor running the simulator and I can put them in whatever environment I want. It could be a concert environment. It could be, it could be, I could rebuild this entire room in there with all of you being in the room, but not in the room, if you know what I mean. So they're actually interacting. So that's one of with the technology advances, we're really trying to keep up on that. And that's a good way to provide that training where they're actually in the environment without having to bring all these other entities in to hold this stuff. So yes, long answer to a short question, if we could provide that. And also, a lot of it is threat assessment and, seeing where your points are that we couldn't even avoid for this the active shooter situations. A lot of times, people are like, well, how do we prevent this? How do we look at that? And there's a lot of indicators of where these situations are going to come from. It's just like when you're looking at major crimes investigations, homicide investigations, you have the folks where they have all these different outside influences that could be the source of why they were murdered. And then you have the other ones where they have less outside influences. So you really have only a couple of leads to go after. It's easier to solve the homicide in which there's only 2 potential things that could have occurred, right? Versus the people that their lifestyle has led to all these different influences that could be the source. So getting back to it, it's like, a lot of times with these active threats, the reality of it is there's always going to be, there's a lot fewer reasons why these things could occur. And most of the time they understand where the source of it is. It's just, there's no one out there to proactively try to diffuse the situation and look at that. So those are all things that I think that everybody does focus, and you do need to have an active threat training program, but we can also look at how can we even mitigate and minimize the potential for any type of entity to be, facing those threats.
And when we talk prior to the meeting, one of the big concerns is here at the port headquarters and with port staff, making sure port staff are safe. And so we talked about like the security assessment, doing an assessment like that, even just at the front door.
Yes.
Having different procedures at the front door if there's a camera and it's locked or whatever that might be. You want to comment on that or?
Yeah, and I think that, any business, and especially we're dealing with, majority of my work is in the Portland metro area, as you can understand. So with that, I always recommend, there should be procedures in place. It should be also tested. They should be, taught then trained, and then even evaluated. Is what you want to look at, a three-pronged approach to things. And understand, your front desk staff, they're probably not going to deal with these situations all the time. So you want to know that they are able to, at a moment's notice, under duress, be able to also recall some of these things. So absolutely, I think that any business should definitely look at their own security footprint and decide if it does need to be changed or adjusted based on their needs. And then obviously, as new information comes in, you need to decide, do we need to up it? Do we need to lower it? I think that in this environment these days, more and more entities are actually taking from the public side, and they're meaning law enforcement is overworked and understaffed, right? So they're having to, more and more people are actually having to do things like, before, especially in Columbia City, you never thought about locking your door. Well, if something was stolen, law enforcement was going to follow up on it, probably get, somebody to talk to it and be able to, prosecute and get restitution. Well, we know that that's not the case these days. Even if law enforcement should happen to catch somebody, the DA's office and the courts are overwhelmed. And so a lot of the lower volume or lower instances, the property crimes and whatnot, a lot of times they're not prosecuted. So that's where now entities have to kind of go, how can we focus on ourselves and use our resources to do more for the security of our facilities or our people, which really hasn't traditionally had to have been done.
The other thing was that by law, ORA 777-190, we have the ability to deputize peace officers, a police force, basically. And so Jeremy's been very helpful because we've been looking around just asking, how does that happen? Do you have to do that in a public meeting or, what is the process for that? And so been talking about how that could occur if we had a contract with a firm like this. It would be much easier to, pull them into service for this kind of thing, right?
Correct. Yeah, there's a history of it. Downtown Portland, which is the Clean and Safe. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But they had Portland Patrol, and at times, and even as law enforcement has fluctuated over the years, they actually did have private security firms that they would give limited deputized powers through Multnomah County. At the time, obviously they were operating under a different way of providing the deputization. And at the time, the sheriff's office was actually giving them that authority to do things like maintenance order, meaning, criminal trespass. They were able to issue citations or whatever. Obviously, they would limit, maybe custody arrest. When I say custody arrest, taking them into custody, taking them to jail, because they didn't necessarily want, but those were all prior law enforcement folks that have had the law enforcement training. So it wasn't like they were circumventing, they were basically augmenting what law enforcement was able to do, because a lot of times they were able to, instead of calling law enforcement, they were able to take action right there. You can do that under as a private person as well. And that's typically where private security is operating in. But there is that option to where it comes to like writing citations. If you have ordinance violations from before, being able to put those into a circuit or a justice court, you have the legal authority to be able to do that and swearing on documents and citations and stuff like that. So that's what that offers to you versus having a private, a private security firm. They have to go through more steps to get things into the courts. If it is, something in regards to like a legal citation, whether it's for a crime or for a violation or whatnot. So.
Jeremy, how would that work? If we deputize a private security firm like yours, how would that work in conjunction with the county jail and things like that? Would we have to have another agreement with them to lodge somebody and then pay X amount of dollars per night while that person's lodged?
No.
How would that work?
Because nobody actually pays for, that's what the taxpayers and the levies and all that, they pay, you would not, because, say the court wants somebody put in jail, there's still going to be a lot, ways that people need to be lodged and certain parameters, because the jail is obviously going to only take certain people for certain crimes. But, no, the port would not. It'd be just like Columbia City Police Department taking somebody in. They don't pay anything else. There's no additional agreements. It's just showing that they have the, just a education piece, most likely for the jail to understand that, hey, we do, they do have this commission. This is something that's worked out. These are sworn in through the port of Columbia County. in order to do this type of situation. So, and what it does is, you know, it's this, that's what you could do. There's not going to be any extra fees. It's just you're putting them into the legal system, and it's giving, you know, that limited, those powers that the court decides to give to those, you know, officers, security officers or whatever. It's going to be based on what the commission says, or what the commission, right? Like sworn commission gives power to them. And, you know, it's just a meeting with them to understand that, hey, you know, these guys or these people may be bringing people in, that they do have the authority. And so it's a front end education, but there would be no cost to the port to do that, because you're a you know, government entity. Basically, it's no different than Columbia County, Columbia City, Rainier, Clatskanie, you know, whatever. They have a government body that is authorizing this to be done.
Does your simulators, are they set up to do for people to come in and do an active shooter type simulation?
Yeah, we had
For that now, so we could send staff to that?
Yeah, and I live just outside of Columbia City and have a shop out there, but we can actually bring it. This would be a perfect room, put it out and actually bring. And so the simulators are Pelican cases. So realistically, I can bring it anywhere. I don't need to have much for setup. We just have an open room. If you're familiar with, you know, what everybody's doing these days with Oculus and all the kids, you know, having the Oculus, the VR headset, that's all you're dealing with, that. And you know, so we can run whatever programs, we can custom build stuff in there with actually taking photogrammetry of the room and actually putting that legitimately right in there. So it's a pretty amazing one. Now, obviously there's always cost with custom stuff, but you could realistically take, and if you had, you know, if this was being used, you could have an open room and still simulate this room for your staff or your office buildings or any location.
Been through that simulation before several times with St. Helens PD, and it's very impressive. And the last time that I went through it, they actually shot back at you, and a little old lady shot me right in the leg.
Yeah.
I stopped all these bikers, and all these bikers are standing there with one little old lady, and I'm watching all them, and she shot me, and they shot these hard rubber pellets, and it left a bruise about that big on my leg. So they're realistic. And
I know which one it was, the trailer. Yeah. And so, like I said, this now is just headsets, and it's almost like, you know, it's actually, you got to be careful, and because, you know, if I put this table in the room and you're in this bare, you know, if I put it in the headset and you're in this bare room and then you come up to go like this on the table in the headset, next thing you know, you're falling on the ground. So, so you do have to be careful about that. But the reality of it is, it's actually a very good way to get training more more often. Because the biggest thing that I always hear with any entity in doing training is I have to pull people in. We got to set all this up. Whereas now, you know, we can come into an environment, we can set up our system, bring one person in, run them through for a half an hour, you know, it's scheduled in their day. They go back out and do their job. Another person comes in. So, you know, it's not tied to actually having to, you know, bring everybody in for a day of training. You know, it's shut down operations. The biggest thing is how can we, you know, what I look at with all what I do is how can I minimize the impact to operations in order to maintain the training. And that's why I kind of got down that road, because I have over 20 stores with one of my retail clients, and I have 20 people on duty every day. So I need to get them training. So now I can have my supervisors or my trainers go run out to each of those locations, not pull them out, pull them into a break room, set it up real quick, run them through a half an hour of training, and I'm not really affecting, and they're still available to respond. So
my question is about our maintenance people who are exposed to the public.
yes, ma'am.
And sometimes the public gets a little cranky.
No, that doesn't happen.
I know, hard to believe, because our people are so nice. So my question is, like, if they run into a situation where they feel things have gotten out of hand, how quickly can you respond if we call you?
It just depends on, I mean, realistically, it just depends on the day and whatnot. I do have, you know, staff that actually lives out here. I am actually usually working from home. So again, it just depends, and that would be,
Vary with those level of service.
but yeah, absolutely. Right. You know, and again, we tried like something for that. We try to have, if there was an agreement set out, it's like, we want to know what the parameter, set you what you would like. And then I can tell you we can do it for this amount, or if, and then obviously a longer time frame and things like that, the cheaper it gets. But it just all depends on in the agreement and the contract, if, we've got some areas where, we have, within an hour response or less. It just really kind of depends on the situation and what the need is and how often. So that's where I can't tell you for sure that, like today, if you said, hey, we need you to come out, most days I could say, we'd be out there, depending on where in the county it is, be there within a half an hour. But, that's really, some of those emergency situations, that's really what your law enforcement is for. We're also trying to, be in place to when we think that there's going to be a problem, right?
Yeah, that was my next question. It's like, if we felt like there might be a problem, we could arrange ahead of time. You could go with our staff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what we do with a lot of our clients. We do also schedule times that we're actually on site because those are the high problem times. It's like typically you can, work with somebody and go, hey, this is a high probability of an issue time. So let's put our resources there versus trying to cover 24/7.
And then the other thing is, do you have training for situations like that where we can prepare the staff for it?
Absolutely. I've got that's what we do for some of our clients when they ask for it is we have, better environmental awareness. We do, we've got another client that we're actually training up their security staff. And they're more, like with my company, we will do anything within the legal limits of the law. There's a lot of companies will say, we're too liability adverse. We aren't going to let our guys do anything but observe and report. And obviously that's why I employ prior law enforcement officers, because they have the training already. The state has paid, or, the state and the taxpayers have paid for their training, and now they're retired or decide to go do other stuff. So, or they, and again, in many cases, I'm having guys leave full-time jobs to come to work for us solely because they, they're getting a similar amount of pay and they're not having to deal with a lot of stuff they have to do and live in law enforcement. And they get to work for one client typically versus a multitude who are all pulling in different directions.
Do they maintain their DPSST?
We maintain the security side. But yeah, they're not maintaining their DPSST certificate. Once they're retired or, they're not you have a certain amount of time to get back into it, but you have to be employed, to have police certification. You have to be employed by a law enforcement agent. So it'll say inactive if they're separated from a department or whatever. But that still doesn't, just because they don't have the certification doesn't mean that they haven't had the training, the update training, the qualifications and whatnot. So, I still look at just because DPSST is police certification is no longer active. That doesn't necessarily mean that they've just lost all that knowledge or the years of experience that they've had. We maintain all the private security stuff, obviously maintaining certified, private security officers, but it's obviously a lot less than what you would experience in ongoing law enforcement training.
And it seems like having this kind of relationship will save a lot of staff time and money, having a direct relationship with a group like this. So.
Well, and unfortunately, we're living in a climate now where this kind of training just seems important to me. Because the exposure of our staff is huge.
And the other side of that is, when people have an idea of how they think they should act, giving staff, right? We've seen overreactions, which has led to more liability for entities because the staff thinks, well, they don't have the de-escalation skills and they think, at one point they just go, I'm done dealing with this, and they push or they shove or do something and are able to articulate. They might be facing a self-defense situation, but they aren't able to, number one, articulate. They've never been experienced. The more that you expose them to it in a training environment, the more they're like, oh, hey, this is the same thing that I did in training. This is an easy day.
Right.
And they're able to already have the neural pathways and the motor skills to actually provide some sort of a calculated response versus going into, we call it the limbic system, which is a fight or flight. And then they end up, lashing out, which causes a lot more, even more backlash, right? So that helps also. And then they also feel more comfortable in knowing what their left and right boundaries are and where they're at. A lot of times it's just left up to, or they sit and talk over coffee and like, well, if this happens, I'm going to do this. And then, that fuels on each other. So, and that happens a lot. Obviously, we see that a lot of social media with a lot of the, civilian or citizen groups is they're like, well, especially when it comes to crime and how I'm going to respond to crime. It's like, well, you would become the problem if you did that, or they're also underreacting and not realizing what they're through, what they are realistically allowed to do. So.
I would just add on the training side for staff, this could be something that would definitely augment what we have. We have some canned stuff that we get some discounts if we go through with SDAO, if we hit some of these trainings. Active shooter's one of them, but it's just you're watching the screen and there's no real action, right? You're just watching and answering questions. So we have some of that basic training available. I think just as from a safety and security standpoint, I'd like to augment that to some degree, whether it's Mr. Hazenkamp's firm or somebody else, we'd love to pursue that just to hopefully make the place safer for everybody.
Absolutely.
I'd just like to add to another level. Glad we're looking at what we're looking at. Take it very seriously. There's also the economic development opportunity. The port had discussions with a couple of LNG proposals that their shipment requirements required law enforcement escorts. And the Coast Guard's not available for that. They would provide one, but they needed like 2 sheriff's department boats. At that time, neither Columbia County, Clatsop County, or Wahkiakum County were interested in doing that. And they approached the port about deputizing a Marines patrol under the same framework of being able to deputize a law enforcement and being able to provide those escorts. So if we put together a framework, that might include that as well, should that opportunity come up.
And that's what a lot of special districts, a perfect one is Hanford, right? Hanford does that. They deputize them, but they're actually a private, it's really run through a private company. But they have deputization and they basically are doing just that. The nice thing about that is, the district holds and decides what those personnel do. And that's why the private security model is starting to take off a lot, is because when they pay for that and that entity pays for it, whether it's retail or whatever, they decide what those folks can do in the contract. So it's not like going through a government entity where we give government entity, another government entity a bunch of money and then they're going to pull for this also. There's not a lot. You directly report to that entity that you have the contract with on the private side, because obviously at any time they could decide, we have an ejection clause in our contract. So they decide to exercise that because we're not getting the service that we have contracted to do. So, and then there's somebody else in the private industry that either decides to step up or, see if they can provide services. So.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And especially on such short notice and.
Anytime, that's what I do.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Yes,
I
thank you. Have a
probably
good
need to
day.
disclose it. The company I work for does insure his company. It's not through me, it's through another agent, but or David.
Yeah, David.
And I'd like to point out that Mr. Hazenkamp checked the public speaker, but we actually invited him and his time limits were because he was a commission's invited guest, not public comment. But there were no public comments other than him written, but are there any on Zoom who would like to speak public comment this morning? I'm not sure how to tell. Brittany, did they raise a hand? Or
They raise a hand. There's not hand.
is there anybody? We'll watch for your hand here. Thank you. Okay, now moving on. And I just turned my agenda. Old business. Dredging project update.
Okay, just a real quick one. We're still analyzing the sediment, getting that back from PSET. And then once that's back, our consultant GRI will be evaluating and get the responses back to the PSET folks by early actually this week, because Miriam gave me this update last week. So some point this week, we should have the sediment analysis back.
Wow, nice.
And we're just, so everybody knows, we're still prepared to dredge for the fall of 23 is what we're aiming for. So,
Want to roll right into,
right into Marine Improvement Project. Okay, under my authority, I signed a $24,310 amendment to KPFF's contract. It basically what it does is it's for the biological assessment, the gangway reconfiguring, design work, and the project splitting into phases. Phase one, upland and water. So that was right on, it wasn't planned, but it's right under my signing authority. And according to our procurement rules, I just went ahead and instead of bringing that to you guys and sign that. So
That's a new process now.
reporting it, telling you about it, and I'm actually, as you may be aware too, I committed to providing a summary of the expenditures on a spreadsheet to you folks. We could do it quarterly or semi-annually if you'd like, to show what I've authorized to spend that's been in my spending authority. So preparing that for you folks. Unless there's any questions, that's all I have.
questions, staff? Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Airport use permit update.
Morning.
Good morning.
We were at a ribbon cutting yesterday and someone said, good afternoon. And then they made them say, everyone had to repeat back again because there wasn't enough oomph. And everyone's good afternoon. He was like, that didn't have enough energy. Good morning. And then, yeah. I won't make you do that. I wasn't going to make you do that. So, okay. So through the fence airport use permit updates, so that you all are aware the action is being taken. An email is going to be sent to Mr. Eveland today after this meeting, now that the minutes have been voted on and are official. So that's a follow-up from the commission meeting on the 29th when he asked for written documentation, written assurance that he can then take to his investor regarding our airport use permit process.
So did that result in an LOI?
It did not. So the initial plan was to do our kind of standard operating procedure, which was an agreement to pay costs, which Bob and I had suggested to them based on a fee number that was based on the amount of work that we felt like it would take to do due diligence on the investor, and then draft the LOI. And then we sent that to them to sign and pay. And then after some communication, figured out that just an email with a link to the minutes was enough. And so, okay, less work.
We didn't charge anything.
Yeah. Right. Yep, so that's that. And then just so you all are aware, we have our first monthly touch base meeting with Transwestern FBO for later today. So we're going to be having those monthly conversations scheduled with them.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Great. Let me try to get my act together and go to one of those.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's at 2. And if you guys want to come. So, that's that. Your update.
Questions of Amy?
Yeah, I'm gonna stay.
You know,
You're
A lot of action today.
Yep. Board office extension?
Yeah. So I had requested to have this added to old business. I won't belabor the point. I know that you already are aware of this project, but it is ahead of schedule by about 2 months. And so I felt like it was prudent to update you occasionally on it, more than I had been regularly, because it's moving forward at a clip. And so I just wanted you all to feel prepared. So we had a pre-application meeting with the city of Columbia City 2 weeks ago, which I can just say was exceptional. Their customer service is above and beyond. They were really collegial. They were super helpful. They had the whole team there, all the department heads. It was just a really, really good experience from a customer service standpoint, and I let them know that. The next steps are that Matt Alexander from Lower Columbia Engineering, who's our project manager on the office, will submit stormwater reports, a land use narrative, and land use drawings with the application this Friday. So after that, we will be getting a geotechnical report on the site for where the expansion will be going. And then hopefully the plan is to go out for construction bids in June or July.
And we can thank Commissioner Kaiser for the right angles not being in place there. So that was his.
Yeah, I had a note to thank you for that. Yeah,
I had right angles and, yeah.
yeah, the Inspired Angle Building. Yes,
That I have the flourish, but are there trees we need to take down?
yes, there are several trees. So
Sort of better, I would think.
yeah, so we actually need to hire an arborist to assess the entire grounds because it's not just that area, they're too close together. Or at least that's what the fear is what we've sort of been told by non-experts. So sort of reassessing, because eventually they'll get so big that they choke each other out and then they start to fall down anyway. So yes, if you look on your first couple of pages, you can see the trees dotted that exist. And then as you look at the page 3 where the office addition is going, you can kind of see, I think there's 4 or 5 trees that get moved.
Slide or.
No, that's fine. That's,
Well, the arborist is here. Hopefully they'll get any tree work we need.
And you guys may be surprised, I know I was, but I walked from the fence down by the river up just to the driveway in the back there, and there's over 60 trees down there. And it's like, you just look down there and you think, oh, there's a bunch of trees. Yeah, at least 60, that's just to there. And then there's at least that many more from the parking lot this way, so.
yeah, it's lovely. There's also a lot of trilliums out there for you guys.
So are the trees that are going to be removed, are they going to be removed specifically for the new building or because they're overpopulated?
It's because of overpopulation. But that is actually a good point. So part of what we had asked for them to incorporate into this project was as much of the trees that needed to be taken down, see if they could be incorporated into the project. And then also the barns that we have that all need to be decommissioned. Trying to maybe use some of that wood as kind of a retro addition, so that it's sustainable and
Yeah, thank you.
incorporates our history. Yeah,
Good. Yeah, because I love the trees here.
I know it's,
They look very special.
We do
I know it's,
love them till the wind blows.
Always nervous.
Our insurance person looks at them differently than I do.
They're beautiful.
And just so you know, I know Miriam had in the past has had arborists and limbing and things. So I think what we're more concerned about as they continue to age and get taller and taller, we see how shallow those root wads are in some of those big fir, and that's kind of scary. The wind gets to whipping, so.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Hill Road Avenue updates, Ellen.
Morning, commissioners.
Good morning.
Good morning, Elliot.
Hearing Amy's story, I was sort of thinking of Robin Williams in Good Morning Vietnam, but I don't know if I have that much energy.
Literally.
That might blow our circuits if you yell it that loud.
Yeah, that might hurt my throat. So this morning, I want to give you a brief update on our progress in developing a remediation plan for Railroad Avenue. Snapshot is that the record of decision, or ROD, should be issued by this coming fall.
God.
In accordance with the terms of consent order from April 13th, 1995, between the port and DEQ, the port was obligated to produce a feasibility study exploring options to address concerns at the various sites identified by DEQ at Railroad Avenue. So between December 2021 and September 2022, port staff, our engineering consultant, geoengineers, and DEQ worked on finalizing the feasibility study, or FS. That work was completed when DEQ accepted the feasibility study on November 7th, 2022. Since accepting the port's FS, DEQ has been drafting the staff report that will lead to a record of decision on ROD after going through a public comment period. The ROD details the work that will be required at the site. It is important to note that the ROD concludes the port's obligations under that consent order. Last week, we met with DEQ to discuss their timeline. This month, DEQ expects to finalize their staff report. This summer, the staff report and FS will be circulated for public comment. The aim will be to have the ROD complete by the end of the summer. Once the ROD is issued, we will enter the next phase. The next phase will be a review of the port's ability to pay and negotiations regarding what our financial obligations are going to be going forward. DEQ's aim will likely be another consent agreement as the project moves into remedial design, during which more detailed work will be, detailed engineering will be done and the timing of the implementation will be developed. We did have some disappointing news during last week's meeting when we learned that a $5 million bond requested by DEQ, which was on the table for the current legislative session, had been stricken from the budget by the governor's office. Proceeds from that bond would have been dedicated to the Railroad Avenue site. Since learning of this, we have been talking to DEQ to see how we can coordinate efforts with the county, state delegates, lobbyists, et cetera, to restore the bond. In other words, it's not too late. If that does not happen, the next opportunity for the funding will be 2 years from now.
That's a legislative, potentially legislative action, right, at the state.
Yeah.
Senator Weber engaged
Stout, yeah.
and Representative Stout.
We may draft some letters to reach out to them.
That was a bit of a
So
surprise.
it can be done in this.
It could still happen.
Biennium.
Potentially, yeah.
Wow, you have to work really fast.
So we've gotten the name of the person at DEQ who's most familiar, because I'm talking to our project manager. So that person is, not involved in the budgetary process.
Right.
So we now know the person we need to talk to, and John's aware of, and Bob has also been keen in our lobby.
Well, if we don't get this, what's going to happen?
We'll have another shot at it. DEQ pretty seems somewhat confident that the next go round we will get a bite at the apple. I was just worried because I'd like to see the bond come in, because then our insurance money and other funding goes that much farther, and
Right.
have a second bite in 2 years, because this project's in current dollars still 23 million. It's not all paid at once. That's over 100 years. I mean, but obviously a lot of that is front loaded. So they sort of mentioned it, and then we are like, well, what can we do? And that's how this process is going forward. So we may not be able to do anything, but we want to try.
So we're gonna start by engaging our lobbyists and working strategies with the representatives, see what we can do.
So another interesting thing that they mentioned was that there's a possibility that the various Scappoose Bay projects, Armstrong, Boise, Railroad Avenue, and possibly even extending to MIP, could be moved into an EPA Superfund site. Now, DEQ is not directly involved in those discussions, but they do not feel that they will ultimately be successful. DEQ's concern is that if that did happen, it will cause a significant delay in restoring the sites, given how far along they are now. And they are also concerned about losing the progress and momentum that we've had over the last 18 months. That effort is being led by some local tribes.
Concerned?
Yeah.
Imagine for what? I hesitated writing that.
How could you say that with a straight face?
28 years.
28th anniversary.
28th anniversary. Waiting on DEQ to come up with an idea.
So I sort of felt that was a softball for one of you, and thank you. That effort is being led by the local tribes. They would like to have an oversight role in the projects. So for Railroad Avenue, and we presume for the other nearby sites, DEQ's intention is to actively engage the tribes and make them a part of the public comment. In fact, one of the public comment meetings will be specifically with them. So to conclude, the feasibility study is done. The record of decision will be done this fall, and they're both important milestones. And I'm happy to report this substantial progress over the last 18 months. And that's my update. If you have any other questions.
May it be so.
I'm wearing my rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, right.
Never happened.
28 years, it's hard to come up with more questions.
Yeah.
I like hair when it's good.
Thank you so much.
New business, resolution 2023-09.
Back. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. I'm back. Okay, so as a part of bringing Mr. Salisbury on as our in-house legal counsel, we've been having some staff meetings where we review our procedures, policies, former resolutions. with all of staff, and one that we reviewed as a team and came up is 2009-43, which was a big year for resolutions. There were a lot of resolutions that year. It established administrative rules for the executive director to be able to renew, revoke, and grant temporary licenses and permits. So that includes things like marina slips, hangars, tie downs, and then also short-term licenses for port property. The resolution stipulates that the temporary licenses and permits that the executive director grants have to, one, at a minimum, be revocable within 30 days or less. They, two, have to be personal to the licensee or permittee. Three, non-transferable, and four, limited to terms of 12 months or less. So currently, as I think you guys are probably aware, 28 of the we have temporary licenses, we have 28 of them, and 25 of them are direct to companies, so existing tenants, which is in direct conflict of what I just said. Number two. Yeah, exactly. So
This was a staff shocker during a collections ordinance training that I did.
So, yes, yes, and I jumped on it immediately. So, bringing it to you all, there's obviously a frequent demand for these temporary licenses for our existing tenants, other commercial entities. We heavily utilize this ability to, be nimble with this tool. So, it helps us be efficient. And so this resolution, 2023-09, requests an amendment to that 2009-43 to just strike number 2. So it would just now say that it has to be revocable within 30 days. So
Will be in congruence with our actual actions. Yes.
I like the other three, but
Right.
I'm gonna choose. What do you think, Chris? You're
I just, I hate working ourselves into a box, and when I hear 12 months, that's the drop dead date on them. If I'm understanding that correctly, that bothers me. There are special circumstances that come up where sometimes you got to think outside the box. And I hate to put staff in a box and say, you absolutely cannot do this. I think that we should put some kind of a wiggle term in there that allows staff to either bring it to us, bring it to the commission, or in certain
Special
circumstances, allow it to.
treat you 12 months with some kind
With a
of commission
caveat.
approval extension of another 12 or something.
I will say that
No,
oftentimes.
he's talking about shortening it.
This
if it
resulted in
needs to.
these after,
No, I'm not.
establishing.
But we just.
Oh, you're not.
I'm talking about,
We just do another.
Yeah,
well, can we extend it for another 12 months?
yes, so that, yes.
I didn't see that in this.
So that's a really common practice. So for example,
Okay.
First Energy has had a finished product file license to add a little bit of square footage onto their leasehold for years. That's very common.
Why aren't we just making that part of the lease rather than doing a special permit?
That's a great question. So a lot of our, and this is something that I'm getting more and more up to speed with, but a lot of our tenants are, while they're local companies and the name itself is local to St. Helens or Columbia City, they have headquarter companies that they have to run all their legal documentation up through. And so I was just talking to Forest Energy about their reoccurring license. It's really inconvenient, couldn't we just lump it in? He's like, absolutely not. I don't want to send our lease to corporate because then it kind of opens up this can of worms to amend the whole thing.
You
Essentially.
should introduce them to the DEQ.
So
Well, but my question is, what if we want to shorten it?
we can cancel it.
Within 30 days, right?
Yep, we can change or cancel anything about it with 30 days notice. Yep.
All right.
They're really, really quite flexible, and renewing them is pretty simple.
We look for that with the commission consensus to come to the commission. That would need to be approved. Amend the ordinance.
We're just now we're amending 2009-43.
Okay, this will just amend that.
Take care of it. Yes.
Yeah. Any further questions of Amy? Sure.
No.
I would move approval of resolution 2023-09.
Second,
Moved by Brian, second by Nancy to approve resolution 2023-09. All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
And while you're here, how about a second amendment to the ORPAT lease?
Yes, which actually is, it flows perfectly into because ORPET currently has a sort of reoccurring license, the temporary license that they use for what we call FPAD at Multnomah Industrial Park. So this, get rid of that. So this is resolution 2023-10 to add a second amendment to the ORPET lease. They've been a good standing tenant at the Multnomah Industrial Park since 2010. It's structured, just so you all are aware, as a ground lease. They constructed the building. And then there's a reversionary clause for the building and the property when the lease expires, which originally expires in 2045, and then they have 2 extension terms that take it out to 2085 and then the building becomes. The facility operates the largest bottle recycling and warehousing operation in the state of Oregon. And they're growing and they need space to expand. So this second amendment adds square footage to their leasehold. It authorizes ORPET to lease that additional property adjacent to their existing facility. The amendment has the expansion in it, and then it makes ORPET fully responsible for demolishing the port maintenance shop that's currently there on site. And it has date triggers for us letting them know that the new port maintenance shop is completed, the new construction is completed, so that they can start the demolition of the former site.
Amy, I had a question on that point. As long as you're on, I want to ask it. The way I read that lease, that we had to be out of our current facility on March of 2024.
Of the old one, yes. So
how are we going to do that when that's less than 11 months? I mean, do we have engineering reports done on that yet? How far are we in that process? Because I don't know of a project we're starting right now that we're going to get done by 2024.
Yeah, so that date was based on the construction timeline that Miriam provided to me with her on the timing. But we do have a trigger date in the second amendment. I don't know if you saw it. It's November.
Did you send it to us?
Yes, it's an attachment. It should say November 1st in the second amendment is a trigger date of when we have to let them know if that commencement date of March is on track. And if it's not, we give them a new commencement date in November.
And they're good with that.
And they're fine with that. Yeah, if that's.
So we could put it out another 2 years if we wanted to.
1 year max.
1 year.
So 2025 or March of 2025 then is our drop dead date.
Yes,
Correct.
So this actually makes us build a new building.
yes, thank goodness.
Yeah. It's not a one. It's happening.
Yes. And it's coming.
Yeah, it's happening. Okay.
Yeah, so sorry.
No, well, go ahead. You finish and then I had another question for you.
Oh, okay. So the terms.
Actually.
Okay, the amended terms are, it's adding 47,000 square feet to the lease. That makes it 177,000 square feet total. It ups the rental rate to 47 cents per square foot for the whole area. It adds common area maintenance charges, which I think you hopefully are familiar with from the Even construction lease. The goal will be to incorporate this into all the leases at Multnomah.
These camp charges, we throw those.
Cam, yep, exactly. Yep, scams. They are responsible, as I said, to demolish the port maintenance shop with our permissions and after we've taken what we wanted from the site. And then we've added in the agreement to pay attorney fees and staff costs should they ask for us to incur those types of expenses. And then one thing I just wanted to mention, because I have a feeling you're going to have this question, is one of the issues that we've had with ORPET is the rogue particles.
Right.
Because when they have their finished product, they put them in these white bags. And so part of the negotiation for this second amendment was that they needed to clean up their site. We're not going to expand your facility if you can't keep your facility clean. And so they've started to incorporate, after that meeting, toppers on all the bags so that it doesn't spill onto the ground. So that's in the process of all being incorporated, but any new finished product in bags is going to have a topper. Bless you. And then actually what's great about this expansion is that it will get rid of the need to have those bags stored outside. It will be a
Good.
topper. Yeah, it will will have a bumper. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes, so that will be much cleaner. No bags at all, which will be much cleaner looking. Yep. Yeah.
Amy,
Yes.
is that new building going to be required to be sprinkler?
They haven't, as far as I understand, started the engineering process on it yet.
How many square feet?
Based on what? Go ahead.
47, it'll be about 20,000 square feet.
Oh, it will be sprinkled.
Yeah.
It will have to be sprinkled.
Unless there's an exemption. Manufacturing usually adds, not takes away, so.
Yeah, when we saw that little bit of stuff burned here not too long ago and how bad that was. I don't know if anybody saw the news the last couple of days, but there was a huge plant on fire. So it is.
It would bet-
Black clouds of smoke and
They're
evacuating people. Yeah.
Probably high flow.
I think that,
Oh, the Tacoma thing?
yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't remember.
Is that the one?
It's back east.
Oh,
But I'm wondering if that's a requirement we can put on that, because you know who that's gonna fall back on if that happens.
That could be an easy question for the St. Helens building inspector. That I could just ask if that would trigger.
I would like to see us make it a requirement in their agreement that.
I would bet big money that it is, but we should find out.
Yeah.
I know that St. Helens guy came from the State Farm Marshal's office, so he'll very familiar.
Yeah.
But could you use a sprinkler? You would have to know what it needs to be contained with, though. Wouldn't necessarily be water, right?
I would
Could be
I
special
think
required, but whatever, usually it's gonna be high flow water, but like we got into the hangar discussion at the airport about well, for hydrocarbons, but it's plastic, will probably be high flow water, big pipes, big open heads. Yeah.
Amy, the other question I had on that is I was reading that 47 cents a square foot. When was the last time we did a survey on what square footage price was for commercial properties anymore? Are we in line or
Yep.
high? Are we low?
Yeah, so I did an appraisal, a market appraisal, and this is in line with the market.
Okay.
Yep.
It's your pleasure, commissioners.
Move to adopt resolution 2023-10.
Second.
Oh, Chip.
And moved by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Buell to approve resolution 2023-10. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
You.
Thank you.
Do I miss any business at all?
Don't believe so.
did it.
Executive Director.
Okay, thank you, folks. Been busy. We've been coming and going. Yesterday, we had the Omic Additive Manufacturing ribbon cutting at out of Omic, their new building. That was very well attended and very long, but it was a lot of good things that were said, a lot of cooperation to make that happen. And I'm really excited about our prospects being so close to that at the airport that there's going to be synergies, right? We're going to land some things that are complementary to Omic and vice versa, I think, with all the surrounding properties there. So very exciting stuff. We, a few of us, Commissioner Fawcett, Amy and myself attended the Representative Bonamici Town Hall for Electeds yesterday before that ribbon cutting, which was very interesting. There was a few of us from the set board and some business folks in town that wanted to talk to her about, you know, business in Columbia County is really looking for support. And one of the very last things we hit on was the next project. We hit pretty hard on it, kind of tag teamed it from, I think, 3 or 4 different people. So, you know, and as we know, she's been a neutral on the project, and I'm not saying that she's tilted off that neutrality, but we spoke our piece, and former Senator Johnson mentioned that there would nobody in that room that was opposing the project, and she felt that strongly about the businesses in the county supporting as well. So really good time. I'm really impressed with Representative Bonamici. Had a CBA board meeting yesterday, which is in case you don't know, it's the board that allows Columbia Economic Team to actually receive money, 501c3. And then they funnel the money. So it's a way for them to get deductions for their donations. So. But the meeting rezone experts are here. They're here today, and they were here yesterday out on the site, crawling all over and looking at things and with port staff. And they'll be presenting here and talking in executive session for some updates. We're meeting the new spotlight reporter tomorrow, Aurora Biggers, I think her name is. just kind of get oriented with her and let her learn about the port and ask questions. We're also later today, as Amy pointed out, we're meeting with Transwestern, the first of our monthly meetings that we're starting up with them. And tomorrow, Robert Salisbury is heading down to Salem again for testifying to the House side, our Senate Bill 814 for the antitrust courts immunity. So Bob's been very instrumental in that and now is kind of the lead testimonial person down there. So he's going down there to help move that along as well as a couple of the court.
I won't bore you with the details again.
Lots to hear.
Antitrust.
He's now the new expert. And then Amy and I tripped on an AAPA localized event that's happening in Portland next week. That's Port, what's it called? Port Leadership Summit. So her and I will be attending that next week. It's a 2.5-day event in Portland.
Nice.
Same time, or at the end of that, NWMTA spring meeting's happening. We're dividing and conquering, and Elliot's, I've gone to that in the past. It's time I'm probably going to transition out of that and have Elliot be our trustee, and we'll decide on an alternate. Bob has made sense as an alternate because he got roped into the antitrust bill stuff, and could be a good source of good source on that committee as well. Maybe a guester, and have somebody else as the alternate. So we'll figure that out internally. And let's see. The 425, April 25th, Maritime Commerce Club State of the Ports annual deal they put on at the Sentinel in downtown Portland. I can send you the link to that if anybody would like to attend. And we have a candidate forum, a port candidate forum at the Rainer Senior Center, 425. And a potential work session on this 26th. And port candidates on Kohai on Friday, 428. So that'll be fun too. You can see the upcoming events. We've got Ports hosting 13 Nights on the River, June 22nd. So it's where we introduce the act. And we have Citizens Day in the Park, St. Helens Citizens Day in the Park on the 24th. And Gina, we have everybody signed up for that already? Okay, I think we're good there. And that's but there'll be a couple articles linked and attached when I send it out electronically. There's only one that I had linked, but Gina had attached it to. Oh, thank you. Yes, that is May 5th, I believe. May 5th, South County Chamber is having a dinner, and we got a table of 8. So I'd like to fill it with commissioners and their spouses, and then we'll open it up to staff. So if any two of you would feel strongly about going to that, that's going to be at. Thank you. Eugenia Hall?
Where's that?
I don't know. Where's that?
St. 5600 mile.
Oh,
Okay. All right. So let me know on that. Also, one thing to bring up too, I think, Bob, did you ask about commissioners about the capital budget rankings?
I did not. I only received 2, so get those over to me. That would be great.
And we can resend those out if you need.
I can resend them out.
Would you please?
yes, please.
I turn my notes in every time.
Yeah.
We must be the two.
We get gold stars.
You get, yes, you get A's.
Gotta be really
Teachers-
to offset Chris.
Just another reminder too, speaking of Bob G, we have a budget workshop after the 5:12 meeting. So we'll have our regular meeting in the morning, 5:12, 8:30. And then directly after that, we'll have the first budget workshop.
Is that 5:10?
5:10 should be.
My mistake. Thank you.
And on that note, I'm gonna be traveling. I'll be getting on a plane at 10:30 that morning, so I'll probably be zooming in for that meeting as much as I can.
You might be the only one if I don't change this. I'll get it changed. And that's all I have.
I would say you looked at, or let's say for me, I guess the PGE meeting, we met with Maria Pope, Bob Salisbury, Sean and I, Maria, KJ and this. Good shoot. Yeah.
And me.
Oh, yeah, Brian.
And Brian.
Yeah.
I didn't make it.
I was not, Brian was there. Don't even look alike. Anyway, the meeting I thought went well, and the whole purpose was just to reappoint. But the end result of the meeting amongst, I think, a lot of issues that we helped, Brian was a huge help in discussing some power issues with EV and things. And the takeaway at the end was that we'll meet more often so that we're on a first name basis, so that as projects throughout Columbia County, but especially Port Westward next to their generation, we can be heads up and proactive and problem solve down there much better. When we did talk about continuity of folks, because like every workforce, a lot of people are retiring or moving around at PGE. So she did let us in on some upcoming changes and said that the folks who were going to move in would be attending the meetings by Zoom and start to get their feet wet so that there's no sudden change in what goes on out there. So I thought that was very helpful. And the other strange takeaway was we were talking about the infrastructure for electric cars and all, which I was skeptical of, but she said actually, and Brooke was enlightening us on some of the scheduling. You plug those new electric vehicles in, they will set a time and they can actually receive a signal from the power company that says, hey, power board's clear, go ahead and charge now at a cheaper rate. So it wasn't as hard on the infrastructure as I thought. You're able to charge them at night. What'd you say, the wind blows and the fish swim at night? Sure.
Wind blows at night. I'll agree with that part.
Yeah. So that was interesting, but
Sundosh, I'm pretty sure, right?
yeah.
Not sure the ocean's about
But anyway, I thought it was a good start and I'm committed that we would keep those meetings going forward, probably rotate commissioners, everybody gets to meet some folks and have a better, closer relationship. Not that it's bad now, but we just haven't had a lot going and COVID kind of put the death to it. So.
And the new government relations, local government relations specialist has been great. KJ, Nancy and I met her for lunch. She's been dialing into our stuff and wants to stay engaged. So it's been nice.
She was on earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was on the Zoom, but it's not now.
We've been trying to put this together since Sean became executive director and finally happened and it was good. So that's about all I have. If FedEx shows up on time, I'm gonna be out of the country for the rest of the month and see you when I get back. If FedEx doesn't, I'll be at the next. So
Yeah, that's scary.
it is.
Yeah.
It is. Fancy.
Yeah, it's a busy season, this season, so attending lots of forums and that kind of thing, and it's all really good. I really like the community outreach that you're able to do in these situations, and I wish we had more of it. Also attended the Scappoose town hall meeting, and I have to say, I am so impressed with the city of Scappoose and the way they engage people who live there, and I think we could learn a thing or two about how to positively engage them by, they did a presentation on city parks and they did gave everybody all the options that they have for improving or expanding city parks. And then afterwards, everybody has a clicker and you all have the ability to decide if you wanted this, or you wanted that. How did you want to pay for it? How much money are you willing to commit to it? I mean, that kind of input to me is so valuable, and I would really like to see us start engaging the people in our community, because I'm really tired of people not knowing who we are. And I think we're all searching for a way to engage. And I think engaging people in something positive like that, where we're asking them their opinion, and then we can actually take it under advisement. I would like to really see us move in that direction.
Strategic business plan, public sessions are coming.
Yay, yay. I love it. Great. That's about it.
First steps anyway.
Yep, first steps.
Mr. Ivers.
I'm gonna go ahead and pass today. Same old stuff.
Awesome.
So as Robert mentioned, we had a great meeting with Maria Pope, and that was really nice to get to know her. And obviously I'm in the utility industry, so it's interesting to chat about some of those things. A good meeting yesterday with Bonamici as well. Let's see. I met with Lacey and Amy on some EV charging that might work its way into the new building, and there's some grant options out there for that. So we're going to continue discussing that. I also went down to Scappoose Bay the other day because I was just curious. Do we have EVs down there already? If we put if the UD put some chargers in there, is that something that's going to take away from the parking? Because I know that was a concern that Chris raised. I went down there, it was about a quarter full. It was during the day, not many people there, but there was a Tesla there. So it kind of got me thinking, like, I don't know if we are going to, if it's really going to affect the parking or not, but I'm probably going to stop by a few more times and just see what sort of how many EVs we already have coming through there and if that would be a benefit, you know, to have charging there. We do get a lot of tourism at that site and folks coming from Portland metro area. More likely to be driving EVs, especially if they're not towing a boat, maybe kayak users, that sort of thing. So curious to continue learning more about that. And honestly, it's an exciting opportunity, I believe. So that's mainly what I've been working on.
Thank you. Mr. Buell.
I guess the only thing I really have to say, I really like the quality of the reports we're getting prior to doing our resolutions, and it's just they lay out everything as far as I can see. So I really like what we're seeing, and it makes our ability to make good decisions stronger and easier, actually. So that's really about all I have to say this morning.
So if there's no other public business, we will take a short 5-minute break and report back in the executive session after our attorney reads. You want to read that going in?
Yes.
Going in, okay?
Let's do it.
We expect no action after the executive session, but everyone will be invited back to close.
The Board of Columbia County will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 492-6602E. Deliberate with persons designated to negotiate real property transactions. F, to consider exempt public records, including written legal advice from Port's legal counsel, and H, to consult with legal counsel concerning rights and duties regarding current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. Representatives of the news media and designated staff are allowed to attend. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the discussions or deliberations that occur during this or any executive session. Port Commission will return to open session after the executive session and will announce any decisions that are the result of the discussions held in executive session. Any persons excluded from executive session are welcome to return to open session. It is resumed.
My attention was taken away for a split second. Did you mention real estate? Do we?
I did, yes.
Okay, thank you. See you back in 5 minutes.
So. Yes.
Okay.
In open session, is there any further business to come before the commission? Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
I saw Doug Bean show up there on the way.
Okay. Is he just late for the?
Who?
Doug Bean, he's the Ed Freeman's